Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday afternoon. It's 2 p.m., which means that it's time for the second Ekkono Open Fika, which is a short format, 15-minute presentation or discussion, followed by where we invite you to do a discussion, debate around the topic that we're going to talk about. We did our first one a week ago. We learned a few things in the process, among other things that it's boring to just talk to a camera. It's more exciting when you have two people in the room. So it's already been improved by the fact that I have Linn Sidahl with me today, yes. Ekkono's head of business development, that will join me in today's session where we're going to talk about business models and how we can make money on smart IoT. So like I said, the purpose is to agree and disagree and get inspired. I hope everyone's got their cup of coffee or tea, like in Linn's case. Some practical issues, the rules of engagement. If you have any questions, if there are any issues, anything that's not working, you have the chat window in Zoom, where you have Eleanor, who's behind the scene, who will answer your questions and help you. Otherwise, you have the Q&A window where you can ask questions, and then we will address them either on the fly if we see them, or after the presentation as part of the discussion. And then, like I said, we really encourage you to get involved, and then you wave your hand. There's a feature for waving your hand when we get to that discussion, and then we will unmute you so you can speak to the audience. So I guess without further ado, let's get started. Yeah. So the technical definition of IoT and Internet of Things is that we connect physical things to the internet. We apply a bunch of sensors and actuators and with the purpose of retrieving data. Now, that's all good. And we talked about that, and including the challenges of actually aggregating all that data in last week's topic that was capitalizing on customer data. Forget about it. But there's also a business aspect to it, because I think there is a tremendous opportunity, even though that might not be that you build a big data lake that you mine. But there's another opportunity in the fact that you extend the relationship with your product to after it leaves the factory. So you can even adjust and evolve the product after it has left your premises. You could even compare it to like waving off your kid to college, sending them off to college. Historically, it's been like a handkerchief in the hand and a tear in the eye, hoping for the best. It's almost like migrating to a different continent before the phone was invented. Now, you would potentially get some sporadic letters, and usually when something special had already happened. Now, fast forward to the IoT era. Now you can track everything, absolutely everything that your beloved student is doing. The progress in school, the mix between education, training, partying, health, and even the mental state. A full-time job for a parent just to monitor and surveil everything that's going on, not to mention the creepy integrity aspect of it. Now, enter smart IoT. Wouldn't it be nice if you could actually get a health indicator, a KPI that proactively would notify you when they will actually need some moral support or money. And you could also be able to nudge them to avoid some of the worst pitfalls that you did during your time at college. So I'm not going to take this comparison any further, because we're talking about IoT. So we are talking about doing business. We are talking about selling products or services that we tearfully wave off from the loading dock, which leads into today's topic for the Open Fika, and that is on business cases for smart IoT, the one topic that you choose at the end of the previous session. And we're going to look at how we can make money. So, Linn, how can we capitalize on smart IoT, or as we said in the headline, show me the money?
Yeah, we can try to guide you to the money, at least maybe. But in general, we typically say that there are two ways of making money. You could either decrease cost or increase revenue. So in sales, 80% of the customer discussions are usually on the latter, and how you can develop and add more value to your products by new, smart and cool features. This is typically also more inspiring and interesting to talk about, but 80% of the purchase decision is based on cost reduction. So, and that typically depends on that it's far easier to calculate and justify a return on investment on a known value such as cost. Value which is what would your customers will be willing to pay for a new cool feature, something they've never seen before. It's very hard to calculate on it, and it's very hard to estimate. So, but obviously we need both.
So you're basically spending 80% of the time talking about the cool features, and then 80% of the decision goes into how can we save money.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely.
So let's split this up in a few different sections and address this chronologically, because we start with production of a product, and then we can look at the installation, the operations of it, and the product life cycle of a product. I think on the cost side, we can easily see that there are three recurring components that we see: people or time, wear parts and spare parts, and inventory, right? And on the revenue side, there's always some kind of added value they provide that you then want to translate into more revenue, right?
Yes. So if we start with production, the first phase, the big benefit is of course on saving cost. So we can consider a smart product that can configure itself after it's been deployed to the environment that is actually going to be used in. This means that you will need to use less inventory because you need fewer, maybe only a small starting stock that you can then deploy to each setting that they are going to be used. And that also leads to the fact that you will save money on people cost. Since you will spend less time actually installing and configure it, you won't be needing to send someone to every site to install something. You can make the product learning at work or learn as it's being deployed.
So it's like an example, if you have an autonomous vehicle, and instead of trying to predict exactly how it's going to be used, it can actually learn the surface on which it operates, typically the kind of load that it's running, or the normal hours of operation it's going to have in a day, the ambient climate in which it's going to operate. So it will actually be the same product that you ship, independent if it goes to a warehouse in Härryda or if it goes to the port of Mombasa.
Yes, and imagine the time spent on actually configuring and installing all of those different aspects and features beforehand.
Yeah,
so it's kind of a big time saving there.
So instead of trying to foresee everything, you actually hand it over to learn at work once it's been deployed, after you've been shipping it and deploying it. Okay. Then now we shipped it. What's next?
Yeah, then it's going to be used, it's going to be deployed somewhere, it's going to be operated if it's not autonomous, or it's going to at least run somewhere. So then it also means that edge machine learning, it enables cheaper parts. So learning per device means that difference in temperature, for example, between now and yesterday is more important than fine-tuning and calibrating relative to thermometers on all units. So virtual sensors can calculate the value instead of using an expensive or hard to get sensor, which decreases cost of goods sold.
So we're actually addressing the actual cost of the components that go into the product by replacing expensive equipment with virtual sensors, and by actually enabling cheaper sensors, since you're looking for the difference rather than comparing between all of the above.
Yeah, and virtual sensors also comes handy when you're afraid of a sensor failing. That's crucial for the operation.
Okay.
So, and when the product has arrived, it comes to the installation part, which we have talked about already. And this was really what I was trying to assess before. Is it really feasible to send someone on site, travel, cost, everything around it, for $1,000 to $5,000 product, instead of just sending the same product and let it configure when it actually gets there? So
it's kind of like a thermostat that learns the after it's been deployed, so it can learn the environment, it can learn the room, it can learn the house, it can learn the preferences of the residents, and then train the machine learning model accordingly. Or like if you send a vehicle, and instead of pre-configuring in detail the fuel injection, it can actually learn what is a good start sequence for that vehicle and how it's being used, right? Okay, so again, it's very much, when we look at the installation, like production, it's very much a question of saving cost relative to making more revenue. But maybe there could be a case where you actually can charge for the added value of having something self-install.
Yeah, and that probably comes in operations step.
Okay, then let's move on to operations.
Yeah, so So when the smart product actually is being used, you can start maybe charging for added features and added value that you base on smart automated technique. So, and it's actually in operations where you have the big opportunity for IoT, because it's not only about fine-tuning where something is going to be deployed, it's also about how it's going to be used,
right,
operated and run. So for example, if we talk about operation, predictive maintenance is typically the first one that we talk about with our customers, where you would like to predict if something is failing. You would like to schedule your service optimal to that, and also get all the different spare parts in time. This is cost saving for the customer, of course, but it's a huge revenue opportunity for the vendors, where you could, for example, add on SLAs or maintenance agreements that you could charge for. So there are plenty of options of how to charge for it, while it's also a huge cost saving for the actual customer in this case.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Typically, people always think about predictive maintenance, but we are seeing more and more, and I like the idea around self-optimization, that you do automated fine-tuning of a product in order to, for example, reduce fuel or energy consumption, because there are other values when you look at actually deploying things in operation. There's also the value in the fact that the product becomes more intuitive. And more intuitive products, we've seen that. Let's take like the Apple's iPhone, that a more intuitive product, a more innovative image typically resembles a premium price. So there are money to be made also when it comes to that. And back to last week's topic about capitalizing on data, where we talked about feeding your neighbor, that the ball bearing can feed data to the electric motor, that can feed data to the machine, which is then providing value to the customer. There are always value in the insights and conclusions that you draw from operations, like predicting even if there's a gasket that needs replacement, or if something's being clogged further up the pipe.
Yeah. So lastly, we've talked about the different steps, but we also need to consider the overall product life cycle and how that should be seen in this context. So a product life cycle, usually you either retire a product, you can upgrade it, or you scale up with another unit. But smart products, they will have an extended lifetime, because you can avoid damaging breakdowns through proactive maintenance, and less wear through optimal configuration of how and where it's being used. So the next step then is, imagine that you can bring all these learnings that you've had, Tamagotchi learnings, like you usually say, and use them in the next product as you buy, or even if you buy more from the same. So you can actually spread the knowledge.
So this probably leads to my favorite use case, the RoboMower.
Yeah, I was just waiting for that.
That I use quite a bit. I love the fact that I want my RoboMower to learn my garden, not a garden, but my garden. And when I'm standing in a shop considering to buy an upgrade, I will stay loyal and buy the same brand if I can actually transfer the learnings about my garden to the next one. I might even be convinced to buy an automated watering system from the same vendor, because the digital gardener, the RoboMower, can actually tell my watering system when some place will become dry and actually need watering.
It's the perfect teacher in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it will actually become an added sales opportunity. And I think that I'm quite sure that this is applicable also to someone selling trucks, or selling mining or construction equipment, or even selling kitchens, right? Sure. So then if you look at product lifecycle, there's another aspect to it as well. It's basically a question of selling or providing, because we have a lot of our customers that talk about how they strive towards becoming or having a more service-centric business model, moving away from the traditional transaction-based product-centric business model towards a more service-centric model. And this is kind of the ancestor of value-based pricing, where you can pay per use. So instead of buying a pump, you pay per pumped liter of water. You pay per driven mile, you pay per moved ton. I mean, that's typically where we see our customers want to move. There's a big difference, though, when you switch from selling a product to selling a service, that you also move the cost and the value of that asset to the balance sheet. And all of a sudden, the production cost becomes less relevant. and the total life cycle cost of that product becomes more relevant. So less stops, less replacements of equipment, being proactive, all these different things that we are talking about with smart IoT becomes much more central to the business model, because otherwise that drops right down to the results. And of course, this would not be possible without IoT, and even less so without smart IoT. And I think that if we would have to do it manually without that smart component, it would definitely ruin the business case.
Yeah.
Mm.
So talking about extending the lifetime of a product, or having a relationship with the product as a vendor throughout the entire life cycle, and starting to earn money during the entire life cycle of a product in different ways, actually also goes hand in hand with sustainability, of course. So extended life or lower energy consumption if you self-configure or automate something, and not sending maintenance staff or engineers spare parts all over the world. That, of course, is more sustainable than what we're doing today. And also the fact that we are moving somewhat now from selling more things. There is no longer the strive to produce a lot of things. It's not a quantitative business model. It's more about selling something that's going to last for long, that you also can have revenues and incomes from for a long time.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think that we've already seen the shift from sustainability being something nice to have to becoming a must-have in your strategy. We're still struggling to some extent when it comes to the business case around sustainability, which is also in many cases applicable to the side when it comes to increased revenue. That very much depends on a number of different aspects. I mean, one kind of feature that might be revolutionary to one industry and totally a game shift, that might be the benchmark in a second industry.
Yes.
Or might be something that creates loyalty or customer lock-in in a third, or might be the thing that is actually giving you the competitive advantage to put you on top in the fourth industry. So how you actually monetize this, that's another aspect where we always talk about the domain expertise, where the domain expertise really comes in handy and is useful.
Exactly, and it's always about thinking a bit outside the box, and we can guide our customers toward us, but it always ends up in the domain expertise. But usually what I hear as well is that you start looking so big at this. You want to change the entire sales strategy or change the business model, but just because you want to start using machine learning or even IoT. And it's not, in most cases, it's not necessary. So always strive to start with what you actually have. What is it that you're selling? Who is selling it? What type of products? Can you save costs in any way, or can you add features to your already existing product portfolio?
Right. I mean, always start with the problem. You always have to have a problem that you actually solve. Otherwise, there's not going to be a business case, independent how hard you try. I can just emphasize that it never starts with technology or data, even though that's what every data scientist is going to tell you, that we need data. Data is crucial, but it's not going to start with that. It starts with a problem and how you can actually monetize that problem. I would go as far as to encourage you to think about who will sell this eventually. Is this something that your salespeople will bring in their sales portfolio? Is this something that's going to be a retrofit to an existing installed base? Or is it just going to be for the next generation of products that's going to give that a competitive advantage? Or is this something that's going to be sold by the services department as a service? Even your partners, the third-party service organization that's providing this to your customers. So think about that and start from that perspective rather than thinking about how can we do a POC or how can we do a pilot. That will be part of the process. But the reality is that a POC never offers any real added value. It's just a tire kicking on the way. So it should be done, but it shouldn't be the focus. You should focus on the problem and the business case. So Linn, I think you had a case in mind. Let's go through that as kind of a summary and a wrap up.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not going to do it for too long, but I really love the use case of car sharing. I think most are familiar. Maybe some have even used car sharing. There are some services out, and why that is so good is because the automotive industry has typically been focused on lowering production costs, very focused. If you look at many automotive suppliers, they spend a lot of R&D money and a lot of time to really fine-tune their production, because each car produced is going to be produced as a low cost as possible, and this has been the way of increasing revenues. That has also led to the fact that they want to sell as many cars as possible. We usually hear every year how many cars Volvo cars has sold.
Right.
As that's like the status number. But if you shift that to a car sharing service, the OEM is not going to sell a car anymore. It's going to sell the car as a mobility service, which means that it's going to continue to own the car throughout the entire life. So it's no longer going to be possible to earn money on service programs, spare parts, etc. Which is why you need to optimize each car to save money on those kind of things and also make it last longer. There is a strong incentive. If you continue to own the car as an OEM, you don't want it to break down anymore, because then you're just going to lose money. So imagine cars, they run everywhere, all types of road, all types of traffic conditions. One day a car is shipped to Madrid and the other day is shipped to Kiruna. It's going to be used widely different, and also by different drivers. So when we talk about individual learning and edge machine learning, a car needs to learn two main things. It needs to learn where it's driven, and it also needs to learn who is driving it. And that's really where edge machine learning comes so handy and fits in so well. So if the OEM could actually say that our car is going to optimize to where it's driven, it's going to optimize its eco driving to how you're driving it, but it's also going to know what you like, what type of climate, music, seat settings, all of it is your preferences. If you could have that data in your profile in a car sharing systems, wouldn't it be highly likely that you would choose the same and the same all over again? Of course. Yeah, so it's exactly like the iPhone that you
so if it auto configures to my settings rather than your settings, because I would be squeezed between the seat and the steering wheel,
exactly,
that would be beneficial.
Yeah, so the business case is going to be two main things. The OEM is going to save a lot of money by having self-optimizing or saving a lot of service money by predictive maintenance. But they're also going to be able to charge premium price and give a premium offer based on this.
Cool.
So it's interesting.
So we've exceeded our 15 minutes.
Yes.
As expected.
Yeah.
So let's switch to conclusions. Eleanor, there you go. Thank you. You want to go first?
Yeah. I think that we talked about it a lot, but you can't start from technology and data. That's what you said. So where should you start? Well, one, find your problem, quantify the value of solving this problem, and build the business case, and also think about who's going to sell it.
That's good. And then I would say think different. Once again, an Apple quote. Learning at work, a different approach to gathering all the data, doing the crunching, and then producing something that is ready and ready to ship. Learning at work is a very different approach. Think Tamagotchi, as we talked about before. The more you feed it with data, the more it learns, the better it gets, right?
Yes. And if we get back to this cost-saving view, then smart IoT first and foremost is going to save cost on manual labor. Yeah. Because you're no longer going to need engineers that are specifically working to fine-tune a machine or going on site to change and spare parts.
So smart automation will replace manual labor. True.
Yeah, it will.
And last but not least, to kind of wrap it up, what we have been talking about throughout the entire presentation, it's not just about connecting things. It's about connecting smart things, because that's when it really becomes a question of business case. Otherwise, it's just technology. So, like I said, we exceeded our time.
I think we have some questions though.
Yeah, we have some in Q&A. I just want to check if someone is waving their hand and would like to be let in to speak and actually tell their opinion. Don't be shy. And then, like I said, there is a very simple feature where you wave your hand if you're using when you're using Zoom. So feel free to do so. In the meantime, let's take a question. Marcus, you're asking about good business cases that you could provide for a customer. I think we what we can do at this point in time is what we have done here, talk a lot about hypothetical business cases, because no one has really done this. Very few have really gone through with all the steps of having an idea, doing the implementation, getting the results, and being able to look at what was the financial benefits of what we did. No one's really there. So we're still at a very infant stage of smart IoT. So those validated business cases, I think we have to come back to. But I think that what we wanted to share is basically that we're seeing a number of recurring models around how you can make production more cost efficient, how you can make installation way more efficient, how you can do operations more cost efficient, and also generate some really interesting new revenue opportunities. And then if you look at the whole product life cycle, data all of a sudden becomes a valuable asset for how you sell your products. So you could even shift the entire way how you sell your products. So hopefully there's some inspiration around business cases, even though we might not be able to quantify them at this point in time, right?
Yeah.
Right. Don't be shy. Like I said, no one's still waved their hand and said, I want to talk. Any further questions? Well, the thing is, I have a question to the audience. So we're going to use the poll tool in Zoom, because as we did last time, you picked the topic for today's session. So we're going to invite you to do the same. Based on what we have talked about, you're going to have a number of options. I don't know if you see them on screen right now, of things that you found, well, this is interesting, I'd like to know more. Do you want to know more about specifically the automotive industry and what we think will happen there? Or is it more on the industrial component side? Do you want to know more about how we can learn per device, that whole Tamagotchi approach? You would like to see the technology or even try it out? Or is there something else? I mean, you have a number of options. I see that the votes are coming in, so obviously you are seeing them. We're going to use that to pick our topic for next time. Unfortunately, we have Easter coming up. So next time is not going to be next week. It's a short week, so we don't work Friday.
No, Good Friday.
It's Good Friday, but it's not a Good Friday for Fika. No. But we are doing something else during next week. We're doing our first open tech Fika. So instead of me and Linn sitting here talking about the business opportunities, we're going to have our hardcore engineers talk about technology. And on Wednesday, we're going to do a session hosted by Henrik Linusson, our data scientist, one of our data scientists, and Robert Zimmerman, director of product marketing, where they will show you the Ekkono lab. So for all of you who are here today, make sure that you invite your engineers to really participate. Or if you want to go yourself, you should definitely do it, because the whole idea is that you should get acquainted with the technology and how easily you can actually set up edge machine learning these days using Ekkono. Next Open Fika will be posted definitely on our social media. So keep track of our social media. LinkedIn is one of our primary channels. And if I look at the results, are you able to share the results, Eleanor, on the screen? It was extremely suitable, because the one that got the most votes is, I'd like to see the technology in action. So that is the next Open Fika on Wednesday.
We predicted that.
Yeah, we predicted that in a very proper way. Yeah. And then we actually have quite a number of votes on virtual sensors. Interesting. I like that. That's an interesting deep dive. Yeah. Where we can look at both technology-wise what that means and the business aspects of it. Yeah. Once again, through the stages from production to operations and everything else. Good. Then we're coming up on 2:30 p.m. We said we're going to keep this short. It's going to be a short, inspiring break for you. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. I hope you're all staying safe in these crazy Corona and COVID-19 times.
We almost managed to have the entire webinar without mentioning it.
We did. We made it
It's good.
29 minutes through the session without mentioning
The elephant
Corona.
in the room.
Yep. But I guess we're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
So thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you soon again. And since we're not going to see you next week, have a wonderful Easter. Happy Easter. Thank you. Cool. Får jag göra här nu?